Okay, good morning everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining today's webinar on behalf of Future South. My name is Ben, I'm Chair of Future South, and we're delighted that people are joining us today to talk about solar energy. First of all, I'll just start by giving a quick introduction to Future South. So Future South is all about creating a zero carbon economy for Solent and Southern England. It's all about economic growth, but it's an economic transition without costing the earth. So our vision is to support zero carbon innovations, a resilient economy and enhanced quality of life. Future South is an internationally recognised not-for-profit public-private partnership. And we do this through investing in different areas. This will be achieved by unlocking green finance, influencing and educating, providing access to global networks and delivering innovation support. And we have a number of priorities as an organisation, and those 5 priorities are deploying renewable energy and other zero carbon technologies, mobility for all through efficient and sustainable transport, communities capitalising the value of biodiversity, resilient homes and businesses, we want to create those across our region, and reducing resource use, including water, waste and energy. And so as you can imagine, today's topics are absolutely vital to what we're trying to achieve. We've got 2 fantastic speakers today. We've got Cory from Absolar. Nick has an MBA from the University of Southampton and an MSc in real estate, and is a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. In early 2020, Nick joined Dr. Phil Wu whilst at the University of Southampton, and they've created a spin out that's looking at how to deploy solar energy at scale. And he'll be talking more about that in a second. And then we've got Francesca Shirley from Namene Solar. I've probably pronounced that wrong, so Francesca can correct me. This is looking at how you deploy solar energy across particularly the third world, but through international schools program that inspires children to learn and gives them the tools to do that in a sustainable way. So again, Francesca will be saying more about that in a minute. So we're delighted you've joined us. We're going to be having the 2 presentations, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions and answers. So please put your questions in the chat as we go, and we should then be able to actually see those. So thank you very much for joining us. And shall we start then with Nick? Do you want to kick off first?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'll just share my screen. And hopefully that is being displayed for you. Please someone shout if it's not. As Ben mentioned, I'm Nick. I'm one of the team here at Absolar, which was originally started by Dr. Phil Wu, who I know some of you may know already. He is enjoying his first holiday since pre-COVID, so I've stepped in to give this presentation. And I should say from the very start that I am not on the tech side, and this presentation has a few tech bits, so please fire those questions at him when he's back. In the theme of citywide solar, I'm aiming to give a very quick overview of Absolar, the type of technology we use, plus a case study of Portsmouth on what their situation is now, how solar could and is helping that city, plus some of the innovatives that we're doing in partnership with the council to promote solar uptake. So very quickly about Absolar, we provide tech-enabled solar information and installation. We split that into 2 markets. On the residential side, we provide pure intelligence, so telling people whether their property is suitable for solar, what that would look like in terms of monetary and carbon terms, and linking them up with approved installers if they want to take it further. On the commercial property side, we deliver detailed solar audits, installations and monitoring, and that's where we have a big difference on project outcomes by surveying the larger buildings and portfolios and then delivering them the real optimal installations. The reason we only deliver installations on commercial property is that households are generally well served and can benefit from quite standardized processes, whereas the commercial property has unique challenges that we are particularly well suited to. And that's a picture of Phil to prove that whilst we're have a strong tech focus, we also wear safety boots, hard hats, and get on roofs. We are a spin out from University of Southampton, as Ben said, from the engineering faculty in 2019, and our mission boils down to helping cities and those in them become carbon neutral and benefit from renewable energy. The tech bit is all around using a few good bits of AI and data analytics, generally geospatial, to identify and assess the solar potential of buildings at any scale, so from a garage to a whole local authority, and lets you see all the data on how a system will perform and enable decision makers to make use of that data in their decision making. And as I said, we then follow that through with installations where appropriate and it fits our skill set. And I just want to highlight on the below section that we've been supported by Green Tech South from the start, benefiting from the Emphasis 3 funding that's helped develop some of these technologies. So really briefly, some of the technology that we employ. At its heart is the base mapping and LiDAR data that forms a 3D building block of a city. And for those of you that don't know what the LiDAR is, that's where an aircraft flies over an area multiple times, bouncing lasers off what's underneath to build up an accurate picture of the landscape, including the buildings and rooftops. We combine that with geospatial analysis, satellite imagery, and different AI models that we've trained and built in-house to understand everything we can about that building. What is its roof space? What are the objects on it? Slope, orientation, all the wall heights, proximity to other buildings or its boundary, and if it already has solar, amongst other things. When we know everything we think we need to know about that building, we can then overlay solar radiation modeling over that whole area to predict what amount of radiation hits every part of the roof every 30 minutes throughout the year. And that lets you simply say these areas are good for solar and these areas are bad for solar, either because there are objects on the roof or because there are buildings, trees, or chimneys that are shading that area. We combine it with lots of other data to translate findings into actual kind of usable impacts. And at the end, we come out with that solar potential for every building in the whole model. So whether that's one building, the portfolio, or the city, all that data is captured. And what that really gives fundamentally is the size and cost of a solar system for each individual property and what the financial and carbon savings you should expect. Quite interestingly, the data is also valuable in working out other energy efficiency upgrades that are possible. So you can model wall, loft insulations, or air source heat pump potential, and we're beginning to roll that out as well. It sits alongside the solar. And then it's going to be looking at Portsmouth as a case study city to look at some of this data. So I thought I'd just share some of the findings that we've had through working with Portsmouth. As a city, it's got 62,000 domestic buildings, much higher if you count flats, but that's the number of physical buildings, and 4,500 non-domestic buildings. They draw around 775 gigawatts of energy, of electricity a year. And for someone like me, it's much easier to think of that as that's boiling 15.5 million kettles a year. So a big amount of energy that they're drawing. Despite that lower level of non-domestic properties, actually 60% of the demand comes from that industry in Portsmouth. And then in terms of CO2 equivalent impact, it's around 190,000 tonnes, somewhere in the region of 2.7 million trees, the equivalent of planting those. So big numbers in terms of consumption. So we run our tools over it with the existing solar analysis. And you can see that at current position, just over 1,000 homes have solar installed and 56 commercial properties, most of which are actually local authority owned or part of the dockyard in Portsmouth. Coming back to kettles, that's boiling around 142 million kettles a year. So it's obviously a small proportion of the properties that have solar already. And you can see on the bottom inner pie chart, a really small slither of the total energy demand. So solar is contributing in a small way towards Portsmouth. So the question then becomes, how many roofs are left? Is it worth pushing solar more? Is it worth investing and promoting it? So what is the potential of the whole city? So then we run our data, run our modeling over every building to say, what could the solar potential be? And it returns this information here. So 38,000 domestic properties suitable for solar and 2,363 commercial properties. And together, ignoring the benefits of battery storage that would also help, but it equates to around 317 gigawatts of electricity, 6 billion kettles, effectively, that it could contribute towards the demand. So it shows there is a significant potential of solar to contribute in much greater numbers in powering Portsmouth, and at the same time, significantly reducing carbon emissions, 78,000 tonnes at current rates. So whilst that's an impressive 40%, it is clear that you can't simply stick solar on every roof and solve the problem. It's often a thing that people assume, well, we can just put solar on everything and everything will be powered by its own solar radiation. It shows it's not true, and especially with increasing electrification of vehicles and heat, it does show that solar has an important part, but it is just a part of the story, and that the national grid provision, whatever that will look like in years to come, will always be the dominant player in terms of powering cities. So it's probably wishful thinking to think that the whole 40,000 properties would install solar in Portsmouth, but actually achieving 15% is something that we could probably imagine. And that would cost around 55 million to install at current rates. And that would save, over the next 25 years, around £1 billion in electricity costs, probably significantly more with the price cap increases that are going on at the moment. So that's at least an extra £1 billion that could be put into the pockets of Portsmouth resident companies. So even if you're a climate doomster and don't believe that reducing carbon emissions is going to have much effect, it's hard to argue against the financials. So it's something we believe will start to really play out, and actually we're starting to see it in the last few months as energy costs become one of the largest overheads that households and businesses are looking to lower. And then, so what is Portsmouth doing about it to kind of kickstart to try and achieve some of this potential? Well, I've highlighted 3 areas that we're involved in that we think are really innovative and driving change within the city. So far, 4,000 households have inquired about installing solar in the last year, and 1,000 households have been taken out of fuel poverty through targeted grant funding. So for the residential market and those that are able to pay, it's opening up solar potential for every household and resident to see free of charge through a web-based service called Switched On Solar that we developed. And here is a 60-second video that does a much better job of telling you about it than I would.
Switched On Solar allows Portsmouth residents to see their home's potential for solar panels, otherwise known as solar PV. Searching for your home could not be simpler. Enter your postcode on the Switched On Solar website and see your results in seconds. Your solar assessment results will tell you your solar potential in a simple 5-star score. It will also tell you how much money and carbon you could save each year, as well as how much electricity it could generate. You will see the best place for your panels on your roof, as well as an approximate cost of the system and payback period. There is lots of other useful information too. You can request a free, detailed PDF report by filling in your details. A Switched On Portsmouth Energy Advisor can also call you to discuss your results and what to do next. Or you can contact one of our approved installers yourself. For Switched On Solar and to see your home's solar potential for free, visit switchedonportsmouth.co.uk.
And for those who are unable to pay, that are in fuel poverty, it's investing significantly in its operations to leverage government grants. Portsmouth leads the South Coast Consortium that accounts for around 800,000 houses, and is using the data that comes out of our modellings to actively target those that are in fuel poverty, that are in urgent need of these energy efficiency upgrades, starting with building fabric and ending up with solar and air source heat pumps. It is one of the best local authorities in the country in terms of deploying the central government money. And for that reason, it gets more and more of those grants are given to them. And then finally, on the commercial property side, on that 60%, we are offering instant property surveys using the technology so that business owners and property owners can understand the investment costs and returns that solar can provide, enabling owners and managers to confidently plan and invest for solar as a sustainability issue, but also as a overhead reduction. Payback for a high energy usage building is now less than 5 years. So it is really starting to open up that big swathe of leased buildings as well within the city. So that's just 3 examples of how data such as ours can be used to deliver information on the ground and create action on the ground. There are much more. It extends into EV transition and decarbonisation of heat, but that is a topic for another time. And that's all I was going to talk about today. So I'll leave up on screen a recent installation of ours at Southampton Science Park, where the provision of solar information sparked a large round of solar investment throughout the park, just to hammer home that we really do deliver on our data in every sense. Thanks very much.
Nick, thanks. That was really interesting and really clear as well, which is great. And I think it will set the scene for hopefully a good discussion later on. So without further ado, I'll introduce Francesca. So Francesca, if you're able to join us, that'd be fantastic. And we'll come back together for Q&A.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you, Nick. That was super interesting. Wonderful. I will just share my screen. And here we go. Make sure I've got, yep, sound is on. So let's have a look. Sorry, just moving slowly. There we go. Sorry, did this last time. Sorry, thank you for your patience. Here we go. Hopefully you guys can see that there, and I will just hopefully move into presentation mode. Can you guys all see that?
That's fine. Thanks, Francesca. That's great.
Awesome. Wonderful. Brilliant. So hello and welcome to an introduction to Namene Solar and our International Schools Programme. I'm Francesca, our Schools Programme Manager. And in the next 15 minutes, I will outline our work at Namene Solar and go into a bit more detail about my work designing and delivering our educational activities to help young people across the world understand and invest in solar. And at the end, we will have time for some questions. So without further ado, I will jump straight in. Sorry, as she says, without further ado. There we go. Awesome. Can you guys see this next slide? Introduction. Fab. Cool. So finite and unsustainable in health, environmental and financial costs, fossil fuels are past their point of diminishing returns. Renewable solar energy has reduced in price by 80% over the last 4 decades, and with modularity, portability, and a myriad of other flexible characteristics that new technologies offer, directly converting the sun's energy into electricity has the potential to power a brighter future for everyone. Namene Solar is a young company with a unique approach to accelerate our global transition away from fossil fuels with solar PV. We tackle the demand for electricity for populations with established and integrated fossil fuel infrastructure and serve those at the opposite end of the global inequality divide, where communities do not have any infrastructure but use fossil fueled appliances. We provide solutions for people no matter their background, and we believe through this approach, we can bridge the global inequality divide simultaneously from both sides. Why is bridging the inequality divide important? Because we cannot tackle our biodiversity and climate crises without addressing social injustice. The two are inextricably linked. At Namene Solar, we are powered by the sun and inspired by human potential. Access to electricity and education, especially for women and girls, are vital in ending extreme poverty and achieving Sustainable Development Goal number 1, no poverty. To achieve our mission, where everyone in the world has access to the abundance of solar energy, we focus on 2 pathways to enhance global access to this transformative technology. The power team currently work on large-scale solar farm and storage projects in the UK, and the lights team, where I work, where we design, manufacture and distribute our award-winning solar lights to people who live in countries without 100% electrification and in disaster-stricken regions. To help us achieve our vision, we have our International Schools Programme. By providing education on both sides of the divide, we can simultaneously accelerate closing this gap by encouraging young people from the global north and the global south to work together. Through our educational activities focused on solar, we emphasize that we have more in common than what divides us, that we can find common ground and relate through our similarities, and our differences make us stronger and should be celebrated. We are connecting students to their peers across the globe through our universal need for safe, clean, bright light. We are tackling as many injustices of climate change that we can, helping students with electricity to understand, even while we sleep, we have a carbon footprint, that our lives are intimately connected and reliant on energy, and that means fossil fuels right now. Excuse me. And that every decision and purchase has an impact on their future and the present of someone else in the world. The poorest families who live without electricity pay the highest health and financial costs for lighting in the world. Kerosene lamps and other fossil-fueled light sources, such as paraffin candles and single-use battery torches, hold families in poverty. Kerosene lamps are dangerous, the worst quality, least efficient, and most expensive light source in the world, used by and paid for the most vulnerable in extreme poverty. To run a kerosene lamp for 1 year will cost a family that survives on $1.90 or less a day, $50 to $70 a year, compared to a family in the global north that can run an LED for about $3 to $5 for an entire year, accounting for the recent increases in price per kilowatt hour. Connect students to our challenges, to one another across the globe, and to the different solutions of different cultures, we are super proud to present our flagship educational activity, Build One, Give One Namene Solar Light. Each Build One, Give One package per student in the global north comes with 2 solar lights. Build One is a kit of parts for students with electricity to learn about solar PV and the benefits over fossil fuels for them, and especially for those who use kerosene lamps. Give One is a fully assembled solar light that Namene Solar puts in the hands of a young person who must use a kerosene lamp to study. The cost of these 2 solar lights, delivery and access to all our educational activities and resources is £25. This can be paid for by individuals, parents, schools, or corporates for their CSR. In our educational activities, we introduce students to the benefits of our solar lights over kerosene lamps. Together, we remove the risk of fatal house fires and burns from people's homes. Kerosene lamps are lightweight, and due to their dim light, they must be used in proximity. They are easily knocked over, spilling their flammable contents, setting people's homes and livelihoods ablaze. Due to the simple handmade design, an old food tin or jar with a piece of rope or fabric for the wick, the flame of a kerosene lamp is naked and exposed to air currents. The cooling of the unprotected flame leads to incomplete combustion and therefore the production of higher levels of black carbon particulates that we call soot. Compared to burning a piece of wood that releases about 0.5% of black carbon, a kerosene lamp emits 7 to 9% black carbon. The time young people can spend studying with a kerosene lamp is limited by the amount of kerosene their family can afford, and their tolerance to withstand the toxic soot emissions that irritate their lungs and eyes. Incomplete combustion also reduces the efficiency of combustion, meaning families must buy more frequently, and black carbon has a very large global warming potential, exacerbating extreme weather through climate change. The more students study with a kerosene lamp and endeavour to improve their lives, paradoxically, the more they negatively impact their present and future. A few hours with a kerosene lamp is equivalent to smoking 40 cigarettes. When we put solar lights in the hands of young people, we mitigate these negative impacts and we displace 92 kilograms of CO2 every year a solar light replaces a kerosene lamp, and contribute in ways we cannot measure to families' quality of life. Namene is a word from the Oshivambo dialect spoken in northern Namibia and Angola that means new dawn, new beginnings. It captures the feeling for families that life has changed for the better forever in ways those of us in the global north can only imagine. I can only relate to when I woke up the next morning after my last A-level exam. In an initial state of panic, I had overslept, I needed to get to my desk to revise pronto, and the immense wave of relief that I could then sink back into my pillow when I realised it was all over and today was the start of a new chapter. Our solar lights are plug and play. They are a gateway for families in extreme poverty to dramatically reduce their fossil fuel consumption the moment they have one put in their hands. They optimize how people already live and work with, not against, the existing culture. Our solar lights seamlessly integrate and improve people's standards of living and give communities confidence in technology that is new to their way of life. We are proudly a for-profit people and the planet organisation due to our sustainable products and services. Within the Namene Solar teams, we have people with over 10 years of experience working in the field to get rid of kerosene lamps and replace them with solar lights. And what we learned from this time was, despite the laudable efforts of charities and NGOs, their inconsistent funds stifled consistent progress to tackle the rising demand for fossil fueled lighting. Eradicating kerosene lamps is a vital step in our journey to a renewably powered, sustainable, fair and just world that requires consistent and scalable effort. Eradicating kerosene lamps will knock off 1% of our global emissions, and we think this is a great place to start for young people to help contribute towards stopping rising emissions, while simultaneously tackling the social injustices exacerbating our greatest challenges. I will show you now a short film of a virtual workshop I did in December last year with our NGO schools program partner in one of their schools in Dubai, where you will see students assembling their Build One Namene Solar Light Kit. In this Build One lesson, students learn about the solar light as a small solution for happiness and climate change, where we help students think about what they use energy for, which turns out to be everything, especially our hobbies. So we need energy to be happy, and what it would be like to live in darkness after 6 p.m, where most countries in the global south that we serve move quickly from daylight to a pitch black night sky. In lesson 2, we continue this narrative that our small solar light solution is also conducive to health and climate change, that poor air quality prematurely kills 7 to 9 million people a year globally. We want to embolden students with access to electricity and encourage them to think of themselves as superheroes. It is difficult to change and introduce sustainable habits in our modern world that has been built largely, as it turns out, with unsustainable best practices, and the associated challenges that arise when we appear to be making strides against our socio-economic norms. Students therefore construct their superhero signal light box using their solar light. In lesson 3, we take this one step further and ask students to create a solar superhero and fossil fuel villain as part of a mini comic book strip that we want to include in a solar textbook that I am putting together, that we want to print locally, where we distribute our give lights for students to be able to learn about solar and sustainable living. In lesson 4, we introduce how solar fosters peace and reduces conflict. In lesson 5, we work in partnership with Solar for Schools and their amazing app, where students have the opportunity to get involved and design and maintain a solar system specifically for their school. And hopefully the schools will also follow on with Solar for Schools and have a solar system installed on their school as well. I'll just play this video now. Hopefully you guys can hear the sound.
Okay, nicely done. Good job with your bike. Just sure. Raise your hand.
These are the rules.
Thank you. Follow. So the screen living inside the city. All right, thank you. All right, guys. Awesome job.
Hopefully everyone heard the sound there. Sorry, I'm doing it again. So that is my presentation come to a close. Thank you all so much for listening, and please feel free to reach out to me at francesca.shirley@namenesolar.com if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Francesca. That's really interesting. Two really good different presentations. So perhaps I can ask you both to come back on and we'll do the Q&A session. Okay, so I'll kick off if you like. So Nick, can I start with you? Just check you're still there. You're still back. There you are. Could you just talk about, you really clearly explained a Portsmouth scenario, and that was really, really good and clear. What if we don't live in Portsmouth? Could you just explain whether we can have a relationship with typing in our postcode and getting some information, or does that have to come with the kind of relationships you build with the local authorities in certain areas?
It comes with the relationship we have in local authorities, yes. So we know, as a small spin out from a university, if we open up to every household, we will drown. So we are partnering with local authorities to kind of take the lead in actually communicating with the householders with any questions that they've got, and then delivering the installation. So it's available in Portsmouth, Isle of Wight, and I think it's coming to Bournemouth soon. So it's starting to roll out that ability to stick your postcode in. We casually say if any householder wants to know, then they can just drop us an email and we'll engage with them directly. But as of yet, it's not a national thing.
And do you have a sort of set relationship with solar installers that is the next stage on from this, or is that very much open to the market and you recommend that open market?
We have 4 approved installers that we kind of that we would recommend on that household level, and that actually feeds into the cost. So when you see actually your property, it's £5,000 to put solar on, it's backed up by the fact there are 4 installers there that are saying yes, they would do it for that cost. So it's supported by them. The solar market is interesting. It's very fragmented. So I think the use of approved installers is quite valuable to make sure you're getting the right system you need.
And I've always sort of ruled it out on my house because I don't have a south-facing roof, but I think we live on the south coast, and the improvements in the efficiency of the panels is certainly not the case anymore. You just have to put it on south-facing, is it? Yeah,
indeed. And actually you see east-west facing roofs are actually very good for how we live our lives in the UK as well. South-facing roof is fantastic. You'll have a huge amount of power, lunchtime through to middle afternoon, probably when you're out at work. The east-west facing does generate the power in the mornings and evenings as well, afternoons as well. So we see a lot of east-west facing roofs that we're saying are actually good for solar.
Okay, that's really interesting. Let me just see whether we've got any come in on the solar question. David, thanks for your questions. You've raised a couple of things. I think you're asking a more broader question about the future of fusion energy in the UK, which I'm not sure any of us are totally qualified to answer, if I'm honest. But my understanding is with the new European collaboration that's due to open in France, that fusion is being given another big heave, if you like. But I think we've all been waiting for that fusion breakthrough, haven't we, for quite some time. So I'm not sure if anyone wants to tackle a question on fusion, but certainly it's there in the list of things we want to see developed as a solution. Nick, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I guess I'll give my opinion for what it's worth. You know, and us as a business, so yes, we're a renewable energy business, but we wholeheartedly believe that nuclear fusion is the base energy. You'll see from that analysis of Portsmouth, and it's the same for every local authority, city, solar is not going to deliver that base load that everyone needs. And you know, really nuclear is the best approach for that, for sure.
Of course, we're making the distinction between fission and fusion, which are two different things, aren't we?
Okay,
so fusion is fusion is the ultimate in clean nuclear energy. So it's the holy grail of the, which is why it's only being basically I mean, if you go up to Oxfordshire, you're seeing fusion generation in seconds, which is actually delivering, but it's how you capture that and keep it sustained that's the issue. Obviously fission, we're all aware of. We've got Sizewell building a new station down in the West Country, but of course the problem with fission is it still comes with the problems of nuclear waste, which is still an issue we need to tackle. Anyway, I'm not sure we'll get, unless you want to come back to us, David, we'll go down that any further, because it's Kamal, you've asked about solar storms and solar maxima. Is that something, Nick, you can comment on?
I mean, briefly, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't have a significant impact on the solar PV cells on the actual part on the roof, but it will impact the electrical equipment, like every other piece of electrical equipment that will be operating. I think there have been studies done that show the severity of a solar storm that would damage a PV system would be such a damage to human life. You won't care about the solar system.
Okay, question here for you, Francesca, also from David. Have you come across the University of Portsmouth's plans, the £7 million mocap studio to improve the essential teaching needed in all schools? I'm not aware of that myself, so I suggest that if you want to follow it up directly with David, you could do that. Does that ring any bells to you?
I've not heard of that, no, but I would very much like to follow that up. I think that would just be wonderful, David. Thank you so much. If I may speak a little bit about the question about fusion, I believe that fusion, being the technology that we don't have at the moment, is very much technologically achievable. It's something that is it's all to do with scale. But I'm very much of the kind of opinion, all the technological innovation, time and funds that would have to be put into to achieve fusion, it is vast. But until then, we might as well use the beautiful, abundant fusion reactor that we have in the sky. And that's why I think one of the things for me was to move down into solar, because studying physics, I thought fusion was amazing. I was just like, this is definitely something that we can tap into as a moving global, hopefully interstellar species. But at the moment we have to use the sun and solar energy, I thought was much more achievable right now. I echo what Nick said about solar storms and solar maxima. I believe, does the sun have like an 11-year cycle or something like this? And then there's I think we're due a solar maxima at some point, and hopefully it will miss Earth like the last one did. But I don't believe we have the infrastructure that could protect us yet if something like that was to happen. So hopefully we will all be okay. But if anyone needs a solar light, you know where to come. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jason, for your comment there about retirement for our generation. Yeah, it's one of those things, fusion, isn't it? That it's always just around the corner, but of course the technology is, yeah, I mean, it's making a major advance, I would say, with the opening of the new South of France collaboration. But yeah, it does still feel a long way away for giving the sort of core needs that we, on the scale we need it. Okay, I think that's the end of all the asked questions so far, unless anyone wants to add any quickly into the chat. Francesca, how long has has the business been going, or the collaboration been going, and how long have you been part of it?
I joined Namene Solar in 2019 in November, and sort of started putting together the school program then. And then unfortunately we hit the first lockdown, so I wasn't able to actually go into schools and test it. So it's been a bit of a slow process so far, but so far we've taught 108 students with our Build One kits, and we very much hope with partnerships like with Solar for Schools, and also working on something with eco schools as well, and their 10 topic criteria where we fit the global citizenship, energy, and hopefully I'm also doing some work on the biodiversity side as well, in terms of how just with global citizenship and energy topics, we can help students and families minimize their carbon footprint, but through biodiversity, through growing soil and looking after the oceans and algae, and yeah, regenerative agriculture and food waste and all that jazz, we can actually also combine that reduction in our emissions with absorbing CO2 from the atmosphere as well. So lots of amazing partnerships and collaborations hopefully to move forward with, and definitely want to be checking out Portsmouth's collaboration, Portsmouth's initiative. So thank you, David. So yeah, does that answer your question?
That it does. David's just added an update on the chat as well, just for more information. Have you got any idea how many of those kerosene kind of flame lights are in operation around the world?
So there are estimates that there are about 1 to 1.2 billion people in the world that still live in energy poverty. And if we can make an estimate that there might be 1 to 2 kerosene lamps in each household, that's yeah, a doubling of that figure, so 2 to 2.4 billion kerosene lamps in the world, but potentially more families. Often a mum will need one for cooking if she hasn't, yeah, but if the fire isn't enough, the father might need one for continuing work, and then the young children will need one to do their studies at night. And there's also the paraffin candles as well, and single-use battery torches. Single-use battery torches are also really, really detrimental, because there is no, as we all know and are very aware of, there is no away when we throw something away. And although we have an integrated sort of waste disposal system in the global north, even if we put something in the bin, it still just goes into landfill. And when families are done with a battery, they will just throw it out their back door. So then you have the hot sun melting the battery, and all those toxic chemicals leaking into the groundwater, and yeah, basically contaminating aquifers and even getting into the ocean. So with the combination of kerosene lamps, paraffin candles, and single-use battery torches, we've got this kind of onslaught of fossil fueled appliances that are kind of contributing detrimentally to the poorest and most vulnerable in the world.
And I know you, obviously the video was showing us how those torches are put together, and the children are very involved in that process. Are you twinning schools from the sort of UK with overseas, sort of getting them to sort of see how those children are studying at night with no proper power and all the rest of it? Are you kind of, is that part of the education program?
Yes, absolutely. That's our global citizenship initiative. We want to be able to connect students that build their solar light with students that they give their assembled solar light to. And that will be through the solar superhero and fossil fuel villain comic book strips, but also through the Eco Schools platform. They have a Relove Your Gadgets, where you can repurpose old technology, and we want to be able to work with them to be able to somehow get technology to students that will be receiving a give light. So either whether our distributors who give them the lights take a laptop that they can connect to Wi-Fi, to data, to then sort of introduce virtually students receiving their lights, or whether it's through letters or a shoebox scheme where we can also send pens and paper and other educational resources. There's almost infinite ways that we can slice this. It's just about kind of almost working with the school, each school that does build one, so students with electricity, and finding out which way that they want to go. So it's very much what the school can facilitate, what they can do, and how they want to go about it. But that connection between students who build one and who the students that receive the give one is a really, really big part of the program.
Okay, fantastic. So again, David's come back with some more information to have a look at. We've also asked on views on microtidal. I think we would all support those, David. I think microtidal has rolled out on a number of streams in England. There's quite a lot in Scotland already. So I think we'd all be big supporters of that. But of course, it's got to be in appropriate locations and linked to biodiversity issues and the health of the streams that you're trying to get micro from. So that's just one caveat there. I think we've come to the end of our questions. Nick, did you want to say any final thoughts? Anything you picked up or things you wanted to comment on?
I don't think so. That was Francesca. That was really interesting on the side of the build one, give one. I think it's something we'd love to support going forward as well.
Right.
Thank you so much. That's so kind, and would love to. I think I know Phil. I met him at a solar briefly. He probably won't remember me. I was sort of like, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing, like chatting with him. But I love what you do, and just would love to continue our conversation. And if I may just speak to microtidal, I believe one of the main barriers is the durability of the material of the blades and the constant erosion from salt water, and that being a huge hurdle. So I think I'm all in favour of microtidal, and I think David's really onto something there as well. So just thank you so much.
Right. Right, Jason. So I'm just seeing you've put a note up. I think you're saying that solar is one of those things we've really got to embrace faster to get on. And I think that was the point you were making, Nick, that the potential is there. Even if you capture just a relatively modest percentage, it can make a massive difference. And I think we'd all agree with that. I think for me, it's about how do you get the finances lined up to help people to ease this process, because the trouble is we've got so many calls in our lives, haven't we, for investment in things that actually, how do you prioritize this over other things, when it comes to things going on in our lives. But I think we all understand its potential, and I think which is why we were so keen to put this webinar on today, because of how important it is. So I think at that positive message, we will close it a few minutes early. I just wanted to say before I finish, that next month on June the 29th is our next webinar. This will be with one of our leading local authorities from across the Solent. Eastleigh Borough Council will be giving a presentation on what they're doing on their climate emergency and how they're addressing it as a council. Andy Brennan, who's their sustainability manager, will be running that session. So do sign up for that for next month. You can find all the events, and a recording of this will be on the Future South website. So it's www.futuresouth.org, and you can get past recordings of all the past webinars, and actually more information about what's coming up. But can I thank on behalf of everyone today, Nick and Francesca for their presentations, and Erin for lining it up with everyone in the back, all the organisation behind the scenes, and we look forward to seeing you at another webinar soon. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Nick. Bye, everyone.